Sir, customers who can't afford the clothes usually just take pictures. Rebecca Collins said it loud enough for half the showroom to hear, and the laughter that followed rolled softly through the marble room like expensive perfume. Malcolm Hayes didn't move. His hand remained calmly resting on the charcoal gray Italian overcoat hanging in front of him, fingers brushing the sleeve with the same quiet focus someone might use while inspecting a piece of art. Around him, the flagship showroom of Valmont Luxury in downtown Chicago glowed under warm gold lighting. Glass displays shimmered. Designer shoes sat on floating shelves behind polished steel. A jazz piano instrumental drifted gently through hidden speakers overhead. Everything in the room was designed to whisper wealth. And somehow, according to Rebecca Collins, the tall black man in a faded black hoodie and worn white sneakers standing near the premium collection didn't belong there. Rebecca crossed her arms tighter as she walked toward him, her heels tapping sharply against the marble floor. Those jackets start at $6,000, she added with a smile that wasn't really a smile. I'd hate for you to waste your afternoon. A white couple near the fitting area chuckled under their breath. Another customer glanced over his shoulder before quickly pretending not to stare. Malcolm finally looked up at Rebecca. Calm eyes. Steady posture. No anger. No embarrassment. Just observation. Like a man quietly taking notes. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change. And we're glad you're here. Now, back to Malcolm Hayes. Rebecca mistook his silence for hesitation. People like her always did. She reached forward and carefully removed the coat from his hands as though he might somehow damage it by touching it too long. Sir, she said again, softer now, but somehow more insulting. The clearance outlets are about 3 blocks south. The showroom air changed instantly. Not loud. Not explosive. Worse. Heavy. A young sales associate near the register glanced downward. Awkwardly, a man trying on loafers slowly pulled out his phone. Malcolm looked at the empty hanger in Rebecca's hand, then slowly scanned the showroom around him. 3 stories tall. Imported Italian fixtures. Custom walnut flooring. A digital wall display worth nearly $80,000 looping the company's newest campaign. He knew every inch of the place because technically, as of 19 days ago, it belonged to him. But nobody here knew that. Not Rebecca. Not the employees whispering near the watches. Not the customers staring from across the room. Malcolm Hayes, founder of Hayes Global Retail Group, billionaire investor, and the man who had quietly acquired Valmont Luxury in a private merger weeks earlier, had walked into his own showroom dressed exactly like this on purpose. No tailored suit. No security detail. No luxury watch. No symbols people could use to measure his worth before speaking to him. He wanted truth. And truth always arrived faster when people thought you had no power. Rebecca tilted her head slightly, still waiting for him to leave. You understand me, right? She asked. Malcolm finally spoke, his voice low and smooth. Perfectly. Something about the way he said it made the nearby sales associate glance back up. Rebecca didn't notice. She was too busy smiling at the victory she thought she'd already won. Rebecca Collins stepped back toward the front counter with the confidence of someone who had never once been challenged inside her own showroom. Her smile lingered as she whispered something to another employee near the register, and both of them glanced toward Malcolm before quietly laughing again. The sound barely lasted 2 seconds, but Malcolm heard every bit of it. He had heard versions of that laugh his entire life. The kind people used when they thought someone was beneath the room they were standing in. Malcolm slowly adjusted the sleeve of his faded hoodie and continued walking deeper into the showroom as if nothing had happened. Rows of luxury jackets stretched beneath soft, golden lighting. Italian leather bags sat inside illuminated glass displays. A fragrance of cedarwood and expensive cologne floated through the air. Conditioning vents. The place looked flawless on the surface. That was exactly why Malcolm had come alone. 3 weeks earlier, Hayes Global Retail Group finalized a quiet acquisition of Valmont Luxury after years of declining customer trust and internal complaints buried beneath polished marketing campaigns. Publicly, the company blamed inflation, changing trends, online competition. But Malcolm had spent enough time in business to recognize something deeper. Stores rarely collapse because of products. They collapse because of culture. And culture always revealed itself when nobody important was watching. Or at least when employees thought nobody important was watching. Malcolm stopped near a display table stacked with folded cashmere sweaters priced at nearly $2,000 each. He ran his fingers lightly across the fabric. Behind him, two sales associates immediately exchanged looks. One of them, a tall white employee wearing a fitted navy suit and silver name tag reading Tyler Brooks, approached with the careful expression of someone pretending to be polite while preparing to insult you. "Can I help you with something?" Tyler asked. His tone carried the same edge Rebecca used moments earlier. Malcolm glanced up calmly. "Just looking." Tyler nodded slowly, but his eyes dropped toward Malcolm's sneakers before lifting again. "Those items are part of our premium collection," he said. "Most customers prefer an appointment before browsing this section." Malcolm almost smiled. Appointment. As if fabric needed permission before being touched by certain people. Around them, shoppers drifted between displays pretending not to listen while listening to every word. Malcolm noticed a young woman near the jewelry counter glance over with visible discomfort. Her employee badge read Emily Carter. Unlike the others, she did not look amused. She looked nervous. Tyler picked up one of the sweaters Malcolm had touched and carefully refolded it the second Malcolm stepped away, making sure the gesture was impossible to miss. "You know," Tyler added quietly, "we had a guy come in last month pretending he could afford this place too. Security ended up escorting him out." The sentence landed softly but poisoned the air around it. Malcolm looked directly at him. "Pretending?" Tyler shrugged. "People see luxury online and think walking in is enough." The showroom lights reflected sharply against the marble floor between them. Malcolm remained perfectly still, but inside his chest something old stirred awake. Not anger. Recognition. He remembered being 20 years old in Detroit, standing inside a department store, while an employee followed him through every aisle because they assumed he would steal something. He remembered his mother squeezing his shoulder afterward and quietly saying, "Never let people define your value before you do." That sentence built half his empire. Back in the present, Tyler gave Malcolm another thin smile before stepping aside. Across the room, Rebecca watched the interaction unfold like entertainment. She folded her arms proudly, convinced she had already figured Malcolm out. What none of them understood yet was that Malcolm Hayes had not walked into the showroom searching for respect. He walked in searching for the truth. And the truth was beginning to speak louder with every minute. The tension inside the showroom no longer hid behind polite smiles. It moved openly now, drifting from employee to employee like static before a storm. Rebecca Collins stood near the front counter whispering to Tyler, while occasionally glancing toward Malcolm with the kind of confidence people carried when they believed the room belonged to them. Malcolm continued walking slowly through the upper-level displays, calm and unreadable, while soft jazz echoed across the polished marble floors beneath him. A digital wall nearby rotated through black and white campaign photos of models wearing the newest winter collection. Every image sold elegance. Every corner sold status. And somewhere beneath all of it, the showroom was quietly exposing something uglier. Tyler caught up to Malcolm again near the VIP accessories section, where custom watches and limited edition leather briefcases sat under locked glass. "Sir," Tyler said sharply this time, "that area is reserved for confirmed clients only." Malcolm looked toward the display. "Interesting," he replied softly. "I was under the impression this was a retail store." Tyler forced a laugh. "It is. For serious buyers." The sentence landed hard enough that even a nearby customer lowered his shopping bag and turned to listen. Malcolm noticed the man immediately look away afterward, uncomfortable with what he had just heard but unwilling to challenge it. Rebecca stepped in moments later, her posture straight, expression polished for the audience gathering around them. "We are trying to maintain a certain atmosphere here," she explained loudly, making sure surrounding customers could hear every word. "Some guests come here simply to browse luxury they cannot actually afford." A woman near the fragrance display raised her eyebrows. Another customer quietly pulled out his phone. Malcolm remained perfectly still. That seemed to frustrate Rebecca more than any argument could have. She wanted irritation. She wanted embarrassment. Instead, she got silence. The kind of silence that forced people to hear themselves clearly. Emily Carter stood frozen behind one of the registers pretending to organize receipts while watching everything unfold. Twice now she had tried convincing herself this was only misunderstanding. But Rebecca's voice kept sharpening. Tyler's comments kept getting uglier. and Malcolm Hayes kept standing there with a level of composure that felt completely out of place for someone supposedly intimidated by luxury. Rebecca suddenly pointed toward Malcolm's hoodie. "This is exactly why appearances matter," she said to Tyler without lowering her voice. "People walk in dressed like that and expect the same treatment as actual clients." Tyler smirked. "Then they get offended when security notices them." Security. The word shifted the entire room. Malcolm slowly turned his head toward them. Rebecca immediately misread the movement as fear. "Relax," she said with a thin smile. "Nobody is accusing you of anything yet." Yet, the showroom air felt colder after that word. Emily finally stepped closer, nervous but unable to stay silent any longer. "Rebecca," she said quietly, "maybe we should just check his profile before this goes any further." Rebecca did not even look at her. "There is no profile." Emily hesitated. "I mean, there could be." Rebecca's eyes narrowed instantly. "Emily, go back to the register." Tyler folded his arms confidently beside her. People like him always try to make a scene once they realize they are out of place. Malcolm looked directly at Tyler for the first time since the conversation began. Calm, controlled, almost disappointed. "Out of place," Malcolm repeated softly. The words lingered between them. Around the showroom, customers had stopped pretending not to notice. Phones remained lowered but ready. Employees exchanged nervous glances. And somewhere beneath the showroom music and luxury branding, the truth kept rising louder with every sentence they spoke. Emily Carter tried focusing on the register screen in front of her, but the numbers blurred together. The tension spreading through the showroom had become impossible to ignore. Customers no longer pretended to shop naturally. Conversations had lowered into whispers. Several people stood completely still near the designer handbag wall, openly watching Rebecca Collins and Tyler Brooks circle Malcolm Hayes like they were protecting the building from him instead of humiliating a customer in front of half the store. Emily glanced toward Malcolm again. Something about him kept bothering her. Not fear, not suspicion, familiarity. The calmness in his posture felt wrong for someone supposedly intimidated or embarrassed. Most people under that kind of pressure either became angry or defensive. Malcolm had done neither. He simply observed the room as though he had already seen how this would end. Rebecca crossed back toward the register counter and leaned beside Emily. "If he tries anything, call security immediately," she muttered quietly. Emily frowned. "He has not done anything." Rebecca scoffed. "Not yet." Tyler walked past carrying folded shirts and added under his breath, "Guys like that always push boundaries once you let them stay too long." Emily felt her stomach tighten. Guys like that. The phrase lingered heavily in the air. She looked back toward Malcolm, standing alone near the upper display platform beneath the oversized Valmont campaign banner hanging from the ceiling. Then suddenly something clicked in her mind. Earlier that week, corporate headquarters had emailed updated executive ownership files to every management terminal in the company. Emily remembered scanning through the names quickly during training orientation. One name had stood out because she had seen it in Forbes magazine months earlier. Hayes. Her eyes widened slightly. Emily turned quickly toward the management computer beneath the counter while Rebecca stepped away to greet another customer. Her fingers moved fast across the keyboard. Employee portal. Executive directory. Ownership records. The showroom noise faded around her as the loading screen spun slowly. Then the profile appeared. Malcolm Hayes, founder and chief executive officer of Hayes Global Retail Group, majority stakeholder of Valmont Luxury Holdings. Emily stopped breathing for half a second. The profile picture on the screen matched the man standing 20 feet away in the faded black hoodie. Same calm eyes, same expression. Her pulse jumped instantly. "Oh my God," she whispered. Rebecca looked over immediately. "What?" Emily swallowed hard and turned the monitor slightly. "Rebecca, I think that is him." Rebecca stepped closer with visible annoyance. "What are you talking about?" Emily pointed toward the ownership file. "Malcolm Hayes." For the first time all afternoon, uncertainty flashed across Rebecca's face. Small, fast, gone almost instantly. She leaned closer to the screen, then quickly grabbed the mouse and minimized the window before anyone else could see it. "That is not him," she said sharply. Emily stared at her. "It looks exactly like him." Tyler approached from behind, carrying a garment bag. "What is going on?" Rebecca lowered her voice. "Nothing." Emily is confused. But Emily was not confused anymore. Her eyes drifted back toward Malcolm, standing quietly near the watch displays, while customers continued watching him from a distance. Suddenly, every moment from the last 15 minutes replayed differently inside her head. The comments, the assumptions, the humiliation. Rebecca folded her arms tightly again, forcing confidence back into her voice. Do you honestly think a billionaire walks around dressed like that? Emily answered before she could stop herself. Maybe that is exactly why nobody recognizes him. Tyler laughed nervously. Come on. If that was really Malcolm Hayes, security would already know. But even he sounded less certain now. Across the showroom, Malcolm slowly lifted his eyes toward the register area. For a brief second, his gaze met Emily's. He did not smile. He did not react. But somehow Emily immediately understood something terrifying. He knew exactly what they had been saying about him the entire time. And he had allowed it to continue. The showroom had become unnaturally quiet. Even the soft jazz drifting through the ceiling speakers now sounded distant beneath the weight hanging in the room. Emily Carter stood frozen behind the register, staring at the ownership profile she had just uncovered, while Rebecca Collins pretended nothing had changed. But everything had changed. Emily could see it in Tyler's face. The confidence was cracking now, small fractures spreading beneath polished smiles and rehearsed arrogance. Rebecca straightened her blazer and stepped back onto the showroom floor with renewed force, like someone trying to outrun doubt before it caught her. Sir, she called toward Malcolm sharply, I think we have spent enough time entertaining this. Several customers turned fully now. Phones remained visible in people's hands. Nobody was even pretending to shop anymore. Malcolm slowly faced her again. Calm. Still. Rebecca pointed toward the entrance with the authority of someone desperate to maintain control. You need to leave the showroom. Malcolm's expression did not move. Or what? The question was soft, but it sliced through the room instantly. Rebecca folded her arms tighter. Or we involve building security. Tyler stepped beside her quickly, feeding off her confidence again now that an audience surrounded them. This is private property, he added. You cannot just wander around touching merchandise you obviously cannot afford. A woman near the handbag display gasped quietly under her breath. Emily felt heat rush into her face. The comments were no longer subtle now. The mask had slipped completely. Malcolm looked around the showroom slowly. At the polished marble floors, the designer lighting, the employees standing stiff behind counters pretending not to listen. Then his eyes returned to Rebecca. You built an entire story about me, he said quietly, without asking a single question. Rebecca laughed once under her breath. People answer questions before they even speak. Malcolm held her gaze for a long moment. Then Tyler made the mistake that changed everything. He stepped closer and lightly grabbed Malcolm's sleeve near the elbow. Sir, we are asking you to go. The room froze instantly. Phones lifted higher. Emily's heart dropped. Malcolm slowly looked down at Tyler's hand, touching the faded black fabric of his hoodie. For the first time all afternoon, something shifted behind his eyes. Not fear, not anger, memory. Suddenly another showroom appeared in his mind. Detroit, winter of 1998. Malcolm was 19 years old, standing inside a department store wearing a discount coat his mother saved 3 months to buy him. A security guard followed him through every aisle before finally stopping him near the exit. You fit the description, the man had said while customers stared. Malcolm remembered the shame burning in his chest while his mother stood there clutching shopping bags, trying to explain her son belonged there like everybody else. He remembered promising himself something that night, while sitting silently in the passenger seat beside her old Buick. One day nobody would have the power to make him feel small again. Back in the present, Tyler finally removed his hand, but the damage was already done. Rebecca stepped forward again, sensing momentum. People like you always act offended once someone notices what you are doing. Emily stared at her in disbelief. Rebecca, she whispered weakly. Rebecca ignored her completely. You walk into luxury spaces expecting treatment you did not earn. The words landed like shattered glass across the showroom. Several customers exchanged stunned looks. One man quietly muttered, "Wow," beneath his breath. Malcolm stood perfectly still, beneath the showroom lights while silence swallowed the room around him. Then finally he spoke. Low, controlled, dangerous in the calmest possible way. You were never protecting this store, he said. You were protecting your assumptions. Rebecca opened her mouth immediately, But Malcolm continued before she could interrupt. And assumptions like yours cost companies millions every year. Somewhere behind the registers, Emily realized her hands were shaking. Because for the first time since this began, it no longer felt like a misunderstanding inside a luxury showroom. It felt like the exact moment before an entire empire shifted. Rebecca Collins tried to hold onto the room with posture alone. Her arms stayed folded tightly across her chest, chin slightly raised, eyes scanning the customers now openly watching the confrontation unfold near the center of the showroom. But the balance had shifted. People could feel it. The confidence in Rebecca's voice no longer sounded natural. It sounded forced, like someone speaking louder because doubt had started whispering underneath. Malcolm Hayes stood motionless beneath the soft gold lighting, while Tyler Brooks stepped backward uncertainly after removing his hand from Malcolm's sleeve. The showroom no longer felt luxurious. It felt charged. Every polished surface seemed to reflect tension back into the room. Emily Carter slowly moved away from the register station, unable to stay silent any longer. "Rebecca," she said carefully, "we need to stop this now." Rebecca snapped toward her instantly. "Stop what?" Emily swallowed hard. "You know exactly what." Tyler looked between them nervously. "Emily, stay out of this." But Emily shook her head. "No. I already checked the executive ownership files." Silence hit the showroom like a dropped glass. Rebecca's face tightened immediately. "Enough." Emily's voice trembled now, but she kept going. "That is Malcolm Hayes." Several customers looked sharply toward Malcolm at once. One man, near the watch displays, lowered his phone slowly as recognition spread across his face. Tyler laughed once under his breath, but the sound came out hollow. "You seriously believe that?" Emily pointed toward Malcolm. "Look at him. Really look at him." Rebecca stepped forward before anyone else could respond. "This is ridiculous," she said loudly to the room. "People see one picture online and suddenly think every black man in a hoodie is a billionaire." The sentence poisoned the air instantly. Even customers who had stayed quiet until now visibly recoiled. Malcolm lowered his eyes briefly, almost disappointed more than angry. Then he reached calmly into the pocket of his hoodie and pulled out his phone. No dramatic movement. No raised voice. Just quiet certainty. Rebecca folded her arms again. "Who are you calling?" Malcolm unlocked the screen slowly. "Someone who handles problems like this professionally." Tyler scoffed nervously. "Oh, here comes the fake executive call." Malcolm ignored him completely and lifted the phone to his ear. "Naomi," he said calmly once the line connected. Across the showroom, every employee went still. Malcolm's voice remained smooth and measured. "Activate black level protocol for Valmont Chicago flagship location." A pause. Then Naomi Reed's voice answered clearly through the speaker, loud enough for nearby customers to hear. "Understood, Mr. Hayes. Initiating executive response now." Rebecca's expression flickered for the first time. "Tiny. Fast. Real." Malcolm continued calmly. "Pull internal surveillance from the last 30 minutes. Freeze employee access logs. Notify regional leadership." Naomi answered immediately. "Already in progress." Tyler looked toward Rebecca now instead of Malcolm. The confidence in his face had started draining rapidly. Then suddenly the first register monitor near the front counter blinked black. Emily stared at the screen. A red message appeared across the system. "Executive Administrative Lock active." Another register shut down beside it. Then another. The digital inventory screens flickered simultaneously throughout the showroom floor. Customers turned in confusion as employees began tapping keyboards frantically. Rebecca stepped toward the counter quickly. "What is happening?" Emily looked at her slowly. "I think you already know." Tyler pulled his employee tablet from his pocket and stared at the screen. "Access denied" flashed across it repeatedly. The showroom music suddenly cut off mid-song, leaving only silence and the low hum of the overhead lights. That silence felt heavier than shouting ever could. Malcolm slipped his phone calmly back into his pocket and looked around the room one slow time. "You spent the last 20 minutes deciding who belonged here," he said quietly. "Now the system is deciding who does not." Nobody laughed this time. The silence inside the showroom no longer felt uncertain. It felt surgical. Every register screen remained frozen under the glowing red administrative lock message, while employees tapped uselessly at keyboards that no longer responded to them. Customers stood completely still around the marble floor displays, phones lifted openly now, capturing every second as the atmosphere inside Valmont Luxury transformed from polished retail theater into something much more dangerous for the people who had mocked Malcolm Hayes minutes earlier. Rebecca Collins stared at the black register monitor in disbelief before quickly turning back toward Malcolm. "What kind of stunt is this?" she demanded, but her voice no longer carried authority. It carried panic disguised as anger. Malcolm stood beneath the showroom lights with both hands resting calmly inside the pockets of his hoodie. "Not a stunt," he replied quietly. "An audit." Tyler Brooks looked down at his employee tablet again. "Access restricted" still flashed repeatedly across the screen. "Rebecca," he muttered nervously. "I cannot log into anything." Emily Carter stepped slowly away from the counter now, no longer pretending neutrality. "Because this is real," she said softly. The words seemed to echo through the showroom. Rebecca snapped toward her instantly. "Do not start acting dramatic." But before Emily could answer, the front showroom doors opened again. A sharply dressed man in a charcoal overcoat entered quickly alongside two corporate staff members carrying tablets and security credentials. The entire showroom recognized him instantly. Daniel Mercer, Regional Director of Operations for Valmont Luxury Midwest Division. Rebecca's face drained of color the moment she saw him. Daniel rarely appeared at individual stores unless something had gone catastrophically wrong. He moved across the marble floor quickly, eyes scanning the frozen systems and stunned employees before finally landing on Malcolm. Then Daniel stopped completely. "Mr. Hayes," he said immediately, "we did not know you were here." The entire showroom went dead silent. Tyler looked physically unsteady beside the counter. One customer quietly whispered, "Oh my God." Rebecca opened her mouth, but no words came out. Malcolm looked at Daniel calmly. "That," he said softly, "is exactly the problem." Daniel lowered his head slightly. "Sir, I apologize for whatever happened here." Rebecca suddenly stepped forward desperately. "Daniel, this is a misunderstanding." Malcolm turned slowly toward her. "No," he interrupted. "A misunderstanding happens once. This was a pattern." His voice never rose. That made every word hit harder. "You mocked a black man for dressing cheap because you decided dignity only belongs to people wearing expensive labels." Several customers lowered their eyes immediately. Rebecca's face tightened with humiliation. Malcolm continued calmly. "You did not see behavior. You saw skin color, simple clothes, and assumptions you were comfortable making out loud." Tyler swallowed hard. Emily stood perfectly still near the register, watching the entire showroom unravel in real time. Daniel looked toward Rebecca with visible disbelief. "Did you seriously ask him to leave?" Rebecca tried speaking quickly now, words stumbling over each other. "We thought he was pretending to be a customer." Malcolm looked around the showroom one slow time before answering. "I was a customer." Silence swallowed the room again. "I came here dressed honestly," Malcolm continued. "And all of you exposed yourselves the moment you thought nobody important was watching." A customer near the accessories wall quietly muttered, "That part." Phones remained lifted everywhere now. Tyler looked like he wanted the floor beneath him to split open. Rebecca's confidence had completely disappeared. Malcolm slowly reached into his pocket and removed a slim black executive access card, embossed with the Valmont ownership insignia. He handed it calmly to Daniel Mercer. Daniel looked at the card briefly, then nodded once with visible respect before stepping aside slightly. In that moment, the truth became undeniable to everyone inside the showroom. The quiet black man in the faded hoodie was not standing inside somebody else's luxury empire. He was standing inside his own. The showroom no longer belonged to Rebecca Collins or Tyler Brooks. The moment Daniel Mercer acknowledged Malcolm Hayes by name, the entire atmosphere shifted like a building suddenly losing power. Employees who had spent the last half hour standing confidently behind polished counters now looked trapped inside their own reflections. Customers remained completely silent, phones raised steadily, capturing every second while the luxury showroom transformed into something colder than embarrassment. Accountability. Rebecca stood near the register counter with her face drained pale beneath the showroom lights. She opened her mouth twice before finally managing to speak. "Mr. Hayes, if we had known," Malcolm looked directly at her, "you would have treated me differently?" The question landed hard enough that nobody moved afterward. Rebecca stared downward for the first time since this started, because the answer sat openly inside the room already. Malcolm slowly walked toward the center of the showroom floor, while Daniel Mercer followed several steps behind him. The soft sound of Malcolm's sneakers against marble echoed through the silence. No expensive dress shoes. No tailored suit. Just the same faded hoodie and worn white sneakers they mocked less than 30 minutes earlier. Malcolm stopped beside the frozen register terminals. This company spent years building campaigns about inclusion, he said calmly. Meanwhile, employees inside the flagship location felt comfortable profiling customers based on appearance. Daniel lowered his eyes slightly. Tyler swallowed hard beside the accessories counter. Malcolm turned toward him. You said people like me always try to make scenes. Tyler immediately shook his head. Sir, I did not mean, Malcolm interrupted softly. You meant exactly what you said. Silence again. Sharp. Unavoidable. Emily Carter stood near the register watching everything unfold with visible emotion in her face. She had never seen power move this quietly before. Malcolm did not shout. He did not insult anyone back. Somehow that made the consequences feel heavier. Daniel's phone buzzed. He checked the screen quickly, then looked toward Malcolm. Corporate Human Resources is ready. Malcolm nodded once. Put it on speaker. Daniel tapped the screen carefully. Naomi Reed's voice immediately filled the silent showroom. Calm. Professional. Final. Executive review complete. Internal surveillance, witness statements, and employee conduct violations have been verified. Rebecca closed her eyes briefly. Tyler looked physically sick now. Naomi continued without emotion. Effective immediately, Rebecca Collins is terminated from Valmont Luxury Holdings for discriminatory customer conduct and executive policy violations. A sharp intake of breath moved through the customers standing nearby. Rebecca's employee badge suddenly flashed red against her blazer as system access shut down live. She stared at it like she no longer recognized the object hanging around her neck. Naomi continued. Tyler Brooks is terminated effective immediately for discriminatory conduct and hostile customer engagement. Tyler looked down at his tablet just as the screen went black permanently. No, he whispered under his breath. Naomi's voice remained steady. All employee access credentials have been revoked. One customer quietly muttered, "Wow." Another person began clapping softly near the fragrance displays. Then another joined. Within seconds, applause spread carefully through the showroom. Not loud celebration. Something more meaningful. Relief. Rebecca looked around the room in disbelief as strangers watched her lose everything in real time. Malcolm remained calm through all of it. This was never about revenge, he said quietly once the applause faded. It was about truth. Emily felt tears burning behind her eyes unexpectedly, because she realized Malcolm Hayes could have destroyed everyone in this room with anger if he wanted to. Instead, he stood there speaking with dignity to people who offered him none. Daniel stepped closer carefully. Sir, we will begin immediate restructuring. Malcolm nodded once. Then his eyes moved toward Emily. Not everyone failed today. Emily looked stunned. Malcolm continued calmly. One person in this showroom remembered what integrity looked like before the system did. Emily lowered her eyes immediately, overwhelmed. Around them, the luxury showroom sat completely silent beneath the gold lights. The same building that mocked Malcolm Hayes for looking poor now watched him quietly rebuild its standards in front of everyone. The applause faded slowly, but the silence that followed carried something far heavier than embarrassment. It carried realization. Rebecca Collins stood motionless near the frozen register counter, staring at the red access light blinking against her employee badge like the final heartbeat of a career she thought could never be touched. Tyler Brooks remained beside the accessories display with his shoulders collapsed inward, no longer looking like the confident salesman who mocked Malcolm Hayes less than an hour earlier. Around them, customers lowered their phones one by one, but nobody left. It was as if the entire showroom understood they had witnessed something larger than a luxury retail scandal. Malcolm Hayes stood quietly beneath the soft gold lighting with the same faded black hoodie, the same worn white sneakers, the same calm expression he walked in wearing. Nothing about him had changed. That was the part nobody could stop thinking about. Daniel Mercer stepped closer carefully. Corporate security can escort them out discreetly if you prefer, he offered quietly. Malcolm shook his head once. No. Rebecca slowly lifted her eyes toward him for the first time since losing her position. There was no arrogance left in her face now, only shock. Malcolm looked around the showroom one final time before speaking. People think discrimination always looks loud, he said calmly. But most of the time it sounds like assumptions. The customers listened without moving. It sounds like someone deciding who deserves respect before a conversation even begins. Emily Carter stood near the counter with tears quietly sitting in her eyes now. Malcolm continued softly. Today was never about clothes, or jackets, or whether somebody looked wealthy enough to stand inside a luxury store. He glanced briefly toward the enormous Valmont campaign posters hanging above the showroom floor. Perfect faces, perfect styling, perfect illusion. It was about how quickly people confuse appearance with value. The room stayed completely silent beneath his words. Rebecca lowered her head slowly. Tyler stared at the marble floor, unable to look at anyone anymore. Malcolm slipped his hands into the pockets of his hoodie again. I built companies because I understood something early, he said. The world will always try to measure you before it listens to you. He paused briefly. And some people become so addicted to status that they stop seeing humanity entirely. One customer near the fragrance wall nodded quietly to herself. Another older man folded his arms and whispered, "That is true." Outside the showroom windows, downtown Chicago had turned gray beneath light evening rain. Water streaked softly against the glass while headlights moved through the streets below like blurred gold lines. Malcolm looked toward the city for a moment before turning back toward the employees and customers gathered around him. Real power does not need to announce itself, he said quietly. It walks into the room calmly and lets people reveal themselves first. The sentence settled over the showroom like final judgment. Daniel Mercer lowered his eyes again respectfully. Emily wiped her face quickly, embarrassed by her emotion. Malcolm finally looked directly at her. "Do not lose that instinct," he told her. "The ability to speak up when silence becomes convenient." Emily nodded immediately. "I will not." Malcolm gave a small nod back, then started walking slowly toward the front entrance. Nobody stopped him. Nobody spoke. The same customers who had watched him get humiliated now stepped quietly aside to clear a path for him through the showroom. Rebecca looked up once as he passed, but Malcolm never looked back at her. He had already moved beyond the moment while everyone else was still trapped inside it. The glass doors opened softly as Malcolm stepped out into the cool Chicago evening beneath the falling rain. Behind him, the luxury showroom remained completely silent under the gold lights. Not because a billionaire had walked through it, but because the people inside had finally been forced to see what they became when they thought nobody important was watching.